All right, I think everything is working this morning so far. The channel uh, page came up. I see three of you are on board. Good morning, everybody. It's Joe Chaffee. We are at a Thursday, and this summer season is winding down. The most humid summer season in the last 50 years in a lot of areas across New Jersey, Eastern PA, southeastern New York, Long Island in particular. It looks like actually the areas from northern New Jersey eastward across the coastal areas of southern New England, Long Island, New York City, up to Boston. We've got a lot of places that when you look back at the data we're talking about when dew points at 70 or higher, the number of hours over the last 4 months, let's say. Let's go from June up until now in September has been astounding. Some places well over 900 hours. That's a ton. And we know how horrible it's felt on some days with respect to that. We've also seen the outcome in terms of shower and thunderstorm activity. One of the things I think, at least as the summer is coming to a close now and we're going into autumn, um, astronomically. Anyway, with the sun crossing the equator and getting 12 hours of daylight and nighttime on either side. But we uh, it's the increase with all these days that we had dew points in the 70s. It did create some excessive rainfalls for a lot of folks, and it seems like we've been talking about this sort of um, pattern that we have, this very broad 5-year cycle when it comes to thunderstorm activity. And a few people have noted, and I know where I live here on Long Island, it's been an absolute drought of thunderstorm activity over the last few years. But it seems like we might have hit the bottom of that cycle last year, and this year things have started to move up a bit because, especially in the last month or so, the thunderstorm activity out here has increased. We actually have had several days this during the month of August and early September where we've had island and end-to-end thunderstorms from the east end to the western part, which is something over the last couple of summers that I don't think even happened one time. So no matter, that's the Long Island perspective. In areas in New Jersey, up to the Hudson Valley, the thunderstorm activity has been ample. Certainly, we've seen in Pennsylvania the flooding episodes have been excessive, and we've had several of those, and also a lot of severe weather in the inland areas as you go further up into upstate New York and in through central New England this year, with a number of spots reporting tornadoes in that entire stretch. So it's been kind of certainly has been a busy summer, and hopefully we're transitioning over into from a bad hair weather pattern to a good hair weather pattern going forward. Okay, a couple of things I want to touch on today. First off, with respect to the wave that's offshore that we were talking about, whether you might see Florence regenerate or not. I'm not really seeing very much happening here. If you look, at least so far, if you look at that satellite over to my left, I'm sorry, to the right, that wave at the bottom of that front. I mean, it's a healthy looking wave, but we don't see any evidence here yet of any kind of tropical system. And what's going to happen is that wave is part of the long frontal zone that extends out into the Atlantic. That's going to fracture away, drop southward, probably turn back westward over the next couple of days. But there isn't a single model that I looked at that shows that system really getting much beyond what we're seeing here. So I'm not really overly concerned with that. Uh, the other thing going on today is, at least not for us, but uh, I like to show the severe weather because at least it gives us an idea of weather systems coming along. And at the moment, with a very strong storm that is running toward the western Great Lakes and up into Canada, and that's going to kind of set the ball rolling for events across the Atlantic over the next several days. We do have some risk today for severe weather. In fact, the Storm Prediction Center actually has an enhanced risk for severe weather across parts of northern Iowa, southern Minnesota, a good chunk of southeastern Minnesota into western Wisconsin, and there's showers and thunderstorms going on there, and that's all inside a larger area of marginal risk that goes all the way down into northern Kansas and extends all across the lake. So kind of late in the season to see this sort of stuff, but it's happening, so we will certainly report on it. And excuse me. Thank you for those of you who blessed me. Here is the look without the radar in terms of the risk. And you got that enhanced risk. We're okay here. Obviously, we've got other issues going on with respect to the onshore flow that's occurring, and that is producing some clouds this morning. See them rolling back. Give a nice fresh view here to the satellite loop. Add maybe an extra frame or two. And the cloud cover overnight settling right along the coast, but there's nothing on the radar, so there's no forecast for any rain or showers today. I don't have them in there, and we're likely to see some of those clouds break up. The sun's going to try, and between that and the cloud cover, it does stay on the cool side, which is a good thing. But we do have very quiet radars. The regional radars right up here, and showing no precipitation. So we're in good shape. There's some showers. Hang on. Let's bring this up front. There you go. There are some showers there rolling through well up into upstate New York, but that is just about it. So I think we're going to be in fairly good shape. Overall, for the next couple of days, we're kind of playing this battle between the high to the north and weather fronts that seem to keep stalling nearby. So after those fronts go by, it puts us in the land of, let's call it the land of the onshore flow. I'm assuming you guys are seeing everything here. I'm just coming back to the chat board. You got 8 people on. Good. Everything is working this morning. You're a Caribbean girl, says Mahogany 2680. So you like that heat and humidity. I don't really mind it so much, to tell you the truth, as long as the air is moving. If there's a breeze with it, I can deal with that. Okay, when you go down to Florida, when you go down to the tropics, there's usually a wind moving the air around. So you're not up here. It's just been so stifling because you go outside and the air just sits on you and it doesn't even move. 9 folks on this morning. Okay, that's a good thing. So I'm just trying to find my window capture here. And I'm not sure. Okay, looks like we got it. All right, so I kind of think the pattern going forward is pretty interesting with, and it looks like I'm almost, I'm a little reticent to say it, but it looks like that we are going to be getting into a pattern for the early part of fall anyway, that is going to be different from what we've had in past years. In the last several years, and certainly last year, which I remember so clearly, with respect to the first part of autumn, right through the middle part of October, we had an extension of summer, a ridge in the east, and that just kept things unusually warm. And those of you who are fans of the fall foliage, there wasn't much of one last year across the Northeast and the northern Mid-Atlantic for those reasons, and also for the fact that we had a much drier summer and into fall, and that is usually not good for a solid autumn season. But I think this year, certainly the rain part of the equation is different. The entire East Coast is soaked up and down between Florence and between having a summer where we had weather fronts and frontal boundaries set up over and over again across the Mid-Atlantic states. Plus the fact that you look at the dryness, the relative dryness. That ain't the case this year. I've noticed that some of the trees are already behaving the way they would behave in a typical fall. So perhaps we're going to see a pretty good fall foliage season. And weather-wise, it looks like we may actually have some cooler weather coming on, and cool weather coming through on a regular basis. If you look at the jet stream pattern in the across North America, we of course we do have some ridging off the southeast along the southeast coast of the United States, but it's on the flat side. What I mean by flat is it's not really pushing up all the way into southeastern Canada. You've got a little bit of ridging, but the strongest part of the upper high stays across the southeast, and then you have this fast flow across Canada, and that brings through shortwave troughs on a regular basis. And gradually, as we move into next week, with the upper high moving offshore, it looks like you have a deeper trough for the middle of next week coming through. So that should bring through some substantial cool air. And then another one follows that appears to be even stronger in the longer range out by the month's end. And it kind of stays that way pretty much into the first week of October. So it looks like we're going to a pattern of a ridge in the western part of the United States. Actually, in the west, you have a bit of a split flow developing. So you ask, what does Joe mean by a split flow? Well, if we take a look here, I'm going to take this on the paint board today. So hang on a second. Let me just, I'll bring that up. Okay, so I got the paint box up now, so we can do a little drawing here. So this is the upper air map that you're seeing is for, look at the time frame here. So we're going out about a week from today. Okay, so what's going on? Well, for one thing, you're gonna notice that the upper high that we have been so used to being in the eastern part of the United States is kind of it's the actual high center is sitting somewhere off the Florida coast, and it is rather weak and suppressed to the south. So what happens with that? Well, that allows this strong Canadian jet's kind of sitting up there waiting for an opportunity to push southward, and it can't do it if there's some kind of ridging in the east, so it does it in places further to the west where there's a relative weakness in the upper flow, enough to allow the trough to kind of drop southward. Well, when it starts to get weak enough in the east, you're going to see the trough want to shift to the east. So there's your jet. Whoops, bad arrow. And then, of course, it runs strong across the Atlantic, and you've got a vortex, a little vortex up there in northern Canada. So we're seeing these systems rotating around and around. But what I mean by a split flow is actually, you've got part of this jet that comes out of the Pacific and goes into Alaska, and part of it that runs down into Southern California. At least from the standpoint of later next week, that part looks very weak. The models last night wanted to strengthen that going forward. So it usually split flows can be interesting in the wintertime because you get a strong jet in the Pacific that comes in pretty far to the south, and you get a subtropical jet that moves across the southern part of the U.S., and then you still have the northern jet coming out of Canada feeding in some energy and some cold air. So sometimes the two of them get together, and you wind up with snow issues here in the east. Just illustrating an example here. Meanwhile, we've been talking about this, whatever's going to happen in the central Atlantic, and you do see some evidence of that with something trapped between the ridge off the southeast coast of the United States, and then there's another upper high or something out there further to the you got an upper high in the North Atlantic there, north of the Azores, so it's kind of sandwiched in between. So it looks like it's a little it's further north. Again, I'm not. I'm not really overly concerned at the moment with what's going on out there. As I'm a little, always a little hesitant to uh, make absolute statements. Florence was, in a way, such an exception for where it was latitude and longitude wise that it wound up making it to the East Coast and making a landfall, one of 9 hurricanes to achieve hurricane status north of 20 degrees north and west of 50 degrees west, and not a single one of them made a landfall in the U.S. until Florence became the first one. See, one of the issues, by the way, always remember, statistics work until they don't. Past performance uh, is not a good indicator of future results, but it is all we have. So you kind of go with it until it doesn't happen anymore. And I've seen it often and more often than not, where you have these uh, situations where you say, well, it's never happened before, or it's maybe only happened once in 100 times. If it wants to happen, it's going to find a way somehow. Okay, so weather-wise, at least going over the next week or so, it kind of looks pretty uneventful for me, for us at least. We do have another weather front that's approaching that moves on through, stalls out. The frontal boundary may or may not produce a chance for a little bit of rain in parts of our area over the weekend. Looks like, at least from the standpoint of the GFS, there's a bit of a heavier area of rain showing up in eastern West Virginia and maybe even into Western Virginia, which is something you guys obviously don't need. Then that high moves out. We've seen this happen often enough in the last couple of weeks. A stronger front approaches. The cold front, the stall front comes back up as a warm front. This is now, we're into Thursday, and then that moves out, and you've got the next week high builds in as we wait for a front uh, back around day 9 or 10. This one has a really cool push. This is at the point, by the way, where we have a deep trough in the eastern part of the United States and a good solid flow coming out of northern Canada. And here you have it with the rather cool air by day 9 and 10. We're at the end of the month at this point, and uh, looking at from the standpoint of above and below normal temperatures, look at this. I mean, this is a push of cool air that's going to go all the way down into the Gulf states. I'll back it up, and we can watch the progress of this. Until then, we're talking about some days below, some days above, but really much of that is going to be controlled by um, whether you have an onshore flow or not. But now we're into September 23rd. We're into over the weekend. See that cooler air that's across the Great Lakes and the Northeast. The boundary zone of that cooler air is not that far south. So, of course, the southern states are above normal, the mid Atlantic states above normal. And it's one of these situations where clouds keep temperatures warmer at night and cooler by day. So, the outcome is what you're seeing here. And much of the below normal temperatures here being generated by clouds and rain, really, more than anything else. It's different with what's coming toward the end of next week because that's a real cold frontal push that goes all the way south. You can see it on the temperature anomaly map that I have up, showing below normal and above normal temperatures, really making it all the way down into the Gulf states and even eventually it looks like into Florida for a short time. So very we'll see if I'm kind of confident that this is going to happen. We've not only seen a number of model runs do this on the GFS, but we've seen confirmation on the European model as well. The European just maybe takes a little bit longer for it to accomplish this, but bear in mind there's the European and the GFS both have had their issues lately regarding how things play out. The one thing I would just emphasize is, by the way, I know it briefly had those above normal temperatures. Looks like they didn't match. The problem is that we're at we only have we can't see we only can see the 8 p.m. Eastern time maps and every 24 hours, so we're not really seeing what's going on in between. So it's very deceptive from that standpoint. But you look at the European upper air across North America, the jet stream on the GFS is a bit more dynamic here, and the short waves that are being indicated here on the GFS a bit stronger, the European a bit flatter, but they both have the same idea. So I think the question is going to be, is this going to wind up being another instance where the models are overdone with these troughs in the long range, and that they come in a bit as we get closer or not? But I think the overall pattern certainly suggests that we're going to have much more, of an autumn this year as opposed to the last couple of years. Out to the Atlantic really quick, just to keep a touch on the tropics today. There's not a whole lot going on, and I'm not really, as I said, I alluded to earlier, not really overly enthused by anything that I'm looking at the moment with regards to what's going on out in the Atlantic. You've got this shortwave trough that's going to drop down right in the middle of the Atlantic, halfway between the East Coast and the coast of North Africa and Western Europe, and it just sort of sits there. It wants to. This is rather than get picked up by this next trough, you do have energy that kind of gets injected into it. I'm not sure how that plays. Look, first off, this is going to be something that, if it does develop, is going to be subtropical to tropical, and that's a process that can take several days or more. And there's never a guarantee that it's going to happen, even even at the time of year where the water temperatures would be warm enough to support this, and the atmosphere would be warm enough to support this. I still think that something is going to try to come out of the Caribbean during the first part of October. And whether that winds up doing anything or not remains to be seen. But that is something that we're going to we're going to keep a mindful eye on. And I'll go into this a little more tonight when I do my regular live stream on YouTube. One thing I want to show you, though, and I put the link up in the chat board. I'm going to put it up again for those of you who jumped on late. But this is a great resource. Today is the 20th of September, and we've got the anniversary of the 38 hurricane. And the Weather Service Boston website has a really nice setup here. If you want to go, hang on, I just jumped off. I want to make sure everybody's with a number of links that you can look to, and pictures of what the damage was like. This was one of only a handful of Category 3 hurricanes, a small handful of Category 3 hurricanes that have impacted the East Coast over the last 150 years plus of the data going back to 1851. But we haven't seen a Category 3 hurricane in the satellite era anyway impact the Northeast. There have been a number of storms that have a number of 2s and 1s, but no 3s. So it's been a long, long time. And what's very interesting here, there's so much on here, but there's a section. When you look at the lowest pressure, by the way, occurred on the south side of Long Island at Bellport, 27.94 inches on the barometer, and a lot of areas reporting pressures down to 2,800. Storm surges up to 18 feet, which is insane. And Long Island, for example, had 10 new inlets that were cut through all of this. And the landfall, there's actually, you've got all kinds of maps here that are available just to take a look at the track. And this is really an absolutely crazy track of moving pretty much on a course just west of due north, but it was the speed of movement Look at where it was, by the way. This was at noon at just south of 30, let's say 38.8 and about 72 and a half. Okay. And by 3 p.m. In 3 hours, it moved um, almost 150 miles. I mean, you're talking about a system that was moving and accelerating at 50 to 60 miles an hour. The momentum of that movement added to the wind on the east side, and there were gusts probably up to 150 miles an hour, and certainly not impossible in a situation like that. With sustained winds of 100, gusting to 150, can you imagine the outcome here? And of course, on the west side, the momentum kind of took away a bit from the wind, but still there were gusts of 60, 70 miles an hour back as far west as New York City. But it was really along and just east of the track here where the damage was extensive. There's also somewhere I don't see it here. It's around here somewhere, but in one of these um, links that you have, and here's another interesting to take a look at the rainfall, for example. These were the rainfall amounts. The rainfall wasn't too crazy. The reds, I believe, there's no scale attached to this. So I'm not sure why that's the case, but you do have these hand-drawn maps here from the archives, some of the actual archive maps. So take a look at take a look at this website. When you go to the Weather Service website, the link is up there for you. It's on the Boston website, so it's weather.gov/box, B-O-X. And from there, there's a link on the homepage that'll take you to it. Or if you go to the New York website, which is OKX, you are going to see a link on their page as well. So I'm going to come back to the board this morning. Let's come back to the chat board. I think, it's been kind of hit and miss. There was some problems with YouTube last night, and I was having trouble. I was trying to set up the live stream early, so at least maybe I would get the watch page to come up. The watch page works, and giving you the watch page link works, but it's also unlisted, so no one can see this. But you pay for all the Patreon members, so it worked last night. Hopefully, I'm not going to see any messages about broken links. So let's spend a couple of minutes. I'll go through some of your observations. So we've got the channel working, so that's good. Will the very humid and wet summers affect foliage? Scott Briller, we certainly touched on that in the discussion today. Timothy Veltman, hopefully it will be nice up in Lake George and Queensbury this weekend for the people at the Adirondack Hot Air Balloon Festival. I'm going to try to get up there one of these years for that. I love the Lake George area and the Adirondacks, Saratoga, that whole area, and also going further west toward Lake Ontario, where I've gone and done some fishing in the north of Syracuse and the Pulaski, Watertown, Oswego, that whole general area. Also a beautiful part of upstate New York. And if you fish, you really need to go up there at least once in your lifetime and try to get some salmon and steelhead. It is just an absolutely awesome experience. Any chance that cooler weather reaches Tampa, asks Chris Bethune. Highs in the 90s are getting old for you. I bet they are. Well, hope that the GFS to be correct, and you might get a short visit, although you got to remember when these cold fronts come down, we start to get to this time of year, those fronts advance southward. They do tend to stall out in North Florida, so that could put you in clouds and showers. It might take the edge off the temperatures, but as for real cooling, you might have to wait a while. Um, Florida and hot weather kind of hot, humid weather go hand in hand, as you know that for a good portion of the year anyway. That's what you're going to get. At least in the wintertime, you catch a nice break from the tropical humidity for the most part. So that's I think you're going to have to be a little bit patient. David Schwartz wants nice weather for the weekend. I don't think for us it's going to be terrible. There will be cloud issues, and I think we have to watch that frontal boundary to see if it buckles and we wind up maybe with some showers, especially as you go south of New York City, probably a better chance. We'll see. It may play out like last weekend did. In which case, I'm waiting. I'll be looking forward to Sunday, where for a lot of areas it won't be getting out of the 60s. Chris Bethune, you're looking forward to your trip to Hammond, New York, up in the North Country for the first 2 weeks of October, and hopefully it coincides with some good weather and the leaf changing, which should be underway in short order. All right, folks, it worked this morning. Yippee. Okay, so kind of an ordinary day here with not too much going on. I'm still sort of in recovery mode with respect to all the weather the last couple of weeks. And I was feeling a bit off yesterday, so I'm a bit better today. We will just do our usual thing today. So we'll probably have a regular YouTube live stream. Timothy, have a good day. Okay. We'll usually have our regular YouTube live stream tonight at 6 o'clock. We'll have website posts up, so we'll just check your Patreon notifications, and they'll be coming up there. And that's pretty much it. So everybody have a great day. Looks like the sun is breaking through the clouds over here where I am in central Long Island, so enjoy it. We probably will see a decent some breaks of sun here, even though the cloud cover wants to be a bit stubborn. And let's see what the weekend brings us and what the weather models bring us later today. Take care, folks. We'll see you.